Today on Voice of the Valleys, a young Scottish girl is being held as the next Queen of Scots or the next Boudicca after footage emerged of her fending off foreign predators with a knife and an axe. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to highlight one popular conservative commentator's reaction to it, which sparked a lot of outrage and why, in my opinion, a lot of people misread the situation. We're also going to be talking about some alarming stats that have come out from various journalistic publications with regards to migrant crime. Really, only what we know, and possibly what we don't know, is even scarier. And rounding out today, Leanne Wood is going to completely distort the meaning of the Welsh flag to suit her internationalist socialist agenda, and we're going to explain why she's talking complete nonsense. All that and more today on Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys, yet again with your host, friend of neighbourhood, far-right thug, always satirical, except when he isn't, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're all doing well. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. I want to get this out of the way. First, to everyone that's been checking over the show with the clips that I've been posting and stuff like that as I've been away. We came back yesterday. I did originally sit down to record this show yesterday, but things just weren't going well. We had a few technical difficulties. We had a few non-technical difficulties, namely the difficulty being me and my brain and not being able to articulate words. And we're back today and to go over a lot of things that have been happening in the political space in the UK recently. But thank you all so much to those of you who checked out the show, who've left comments on the videos and stuff like that, especially that one video, which has really spawned a massive wave, a tsunami for a channel that was the size of mine at the time, over a period of several days. Where over that period we've gone up about tenfold in our subscriber number. I don't know if tenfold is the right expression. Either way, gone up by about nearly 10 times. So I'm just going to get it up on my phone a moment. At the start of the weekend, I woke up to a very nice surprise on the Friday morning. Friday morning was the 22nd of August, and I noticed that there'd been a fair few views on one of the clips that I posted. Namely, it was the one about the Britannia Hotel incident. I think was on about nearly 2,000 views at the time. Several comments, several likes, and little did I know that over the weekend that video would skyrocket, which is now sitting at, I believe, over 46,000 views. And from that, from people leaving comments, which I greatly appreciate as well, especially you guys who send, this person sent me here and subscribed. It's great to hear a Valley's voice on all of this stuff. Even people with very good criticism and stuff like that of me, which I do see. I don't see all the comments. Obviously, there's nearly 400 comments on that video alone, for example, so I can't obviously see all of those. But thank you to everybody who's left comments. It's good to know that we do have a community out there, especially in some areas like mine where people are quite politically apathetic. From what I can see, it's slowly changing. I did see 2 flags flying from a bridge on my way to work this morning, so that was very, very nice. But yeah, thank you to everybody. And now our subscriber number is currently sitting at 1,276. So from the Friday morning, it was about 220-ish when I woke up. That was a nice surprise. It got up about 30 to 40 from when I was asleep. And then over the course of that day and going into the weekend, and now obviously it's Wednesday today, Wednesday the 27th at time of recording, it's gone up to over 1,276. So thank you all so much. It made turning 26 all the more special. So thank you all so much. And I hope you continue to get value out of it. I did see somebody leave a comment on one of the videos saying this is good, but you're preaching to the converted. And I get that. I do get that. And it took me a while to wake up to what was going on. It wasn't, a couple of, years ago when I was in uni, just completely, I wasn't one of these hardcore, purple-haired feminist libs, right? But it was just the norm, right? The left-wing orthodoxy was just the norm. You didn't know anything different, right? So it took me a while COVID didn't do it initially. It was only learning a lot of things afterwards from people who were willing to speak it to great risk to themselves. Just to name off a few, Jordan B. Peterson with the trans stuff and everything that he went through, people whistleblowing on the COVID stuff, just learning basic how to conduct yourself as a man, really, from people like Andrew Wilson, Matt Walsh, all of these people that were really challenging the political orthodoxy, the political narrative, and doing so, and the people that were supposedly experts and our elected officials and stuff like that had no way to, combat what they were saying. And we've seen now the greater descent, especially in the UK, into socialist tyranny, where they don't have good arguments for the things that they're doing. They know what they're doing is tyrannical and evil. So they're having to censor things. Right? And it makes you think back all the way to when I was a kid, the political initiatives that were being brought in when I was a kid that we didn't know anything about, but were affecting us regardless. And then you really start to feel angry and resentful. And in which instance, thank you all so much to those of you who left me kind words and prayers and stuff like that. I greatly appreciate it. We all struggle with personal vices, obviously. So thank you all for your kind words and for your prayers, and please do be saying them for other people as well, not just me, other people who are dealing with them in the day-to-day as well. We all have the temptations, we all have, those impulses and desires to do evil sometimes. So please, we got to make sure that we keep not reinforcing each other in that regard. Because what we got coming it's greater than flesh and blood, the conflict we have coming. But anyway, and the conflict that's been brewing, rather. Getting into the topics for today. So, the main story that's been breaking and causing a lot of controversy at the moment, particularly with one person's reaction to it, not the issue itself, but the wider issue at play, which I'll get into in a moment. I think this person has been, a lot of people missed the actual point that this person was making when he said what he said. The post is no longer up on X, actually, but what happened was there was an incident that happened in Scotland recently, which has led to some people, calling this now 14-year-old girl. It's a 14-year-old girl, and I've forgotten her name at that time of recording. I do apologize. A 14-year-old girl had to defend herself and her sister, who was a 12-year-old, I believe, from foreign predators, I believe, adult foreign predators, a Muslim male in particular, and also I believe it was a female that was with him, who wanted to do heinous things to this 12-year-old girl, right? This was in Lochee up in Scotland. I hope I'm saying that right. It's Lochee, okay, one word. So it might be Lochee, I don't know, or Lochee. I'm not sure how to pronounce the Scottish name. Maybe some of the Scottish guys I've had on the podcast, if you're listening, can help me out with how to pronounce this, right? I had great trouble with one of my interviews in the past with James Monroe, where he mentioned some of the work that he was doing with the Homeland Party as an activist, for example, up in a place known as Forfar, as he would say. So I had great difficulty trying to spell that and find where that place was from initially. Anyway, there was a 14-year-old girl who had to brandish a axe and a knife as defense against these people who were encroaching on her. As predictably, ladies and gentlemen, the adult predators in this instance, nothing was happened to them. I don't believe they were arrested or charged or anything like that. The girl, however, was indeed arrested, and she's been, quote, reported to the relevant authorities. So reporting now from the Courier, which I believe is a Scottish outlet. This was written and posted on the afternoon of August 24th. Girl 14 charged after bladed weapon incident in Dundee. Police were called to St. Anne in Lochee on Saturday night. A 14-year-old girl has been charged after allegedly being caught with a bladed weapon in Dundee. Police were called to St. Anne Lane, just off Cooper Angus Road in Lochee, shortly after 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. It followed reports of a girl having a bladed weapon. Several police cars attended the scene at the Balgay Street car park following the report. At around 7:40 p.m. on Saturday, we received a report of a female youth with a bladed weapon in St. Anne Lane, Dundee. A Police Scotland spokesperson has reported. Officers attended and a 14-year-old girl was charged in connection. She will be reported to the relevant authorities, which can only presumably means that they're going to do everything they can to make this girl's life a living hell. But you'll notice there, ladies and gentlemen, you did not learn the fact that it was these young girls being preyed upon by this. And footage we're going to show in a minute doesn't make that explicitly clear either, apart from the fact that the wider situation is you have a group of adults encroaching on young children, and these teens, in this instance now, are having to brandish weapons to defend themselves. That should tell you all you need to fucking know, really, especially when you learn that people are foreigners. But you never would have known that unless you'd seen this post, which I'm going to read for you now, from the mother of one of the friends of the girls in question, right? They got attacked by two people in Low-Key. They were trying to chat up this girl who's 12 years old, and it was the sister of the girl in question. So she told them to leave her alone, and the two of them allegedly jumped on her. My daughter was with her and called the police. And obviously, in the reporting afterwards, there's been no mention the fact that these girls were threatened, and many people then outright tried to say that they were the aggressors, right? The children defending themselves from adults in this instance, they are the aggressors. Yes, of course they are. But this is the video in question, ladies and gentlemen, that's been making the rounds on social media and has spawned all manner of now AI drawings of this girl being, heralded up as the new Boudicca and the new Queen of Scots, right? We'll look at some of that artwork in a moment. But this is the video which has 23.4 million views online of the young girls having to defend themselves because obviously, as we know, the authorities, which are a massive problem, we'll be getting onto those later on in this episode with the recent reports from Rupert Lowe and the rape gang inquiry into local authorities, they won't do anything. The police won't do anything. It's on now the girls or the females in many instances to do it themselves, outside men that obviously will protect them at great risk to themselves in the two-tier society that we live in. But here is the video coming on screen for you.
Yes, you have a knife.
Why are fucking wealthy? You're fucking bad and catch
Why are you
me.
fucking with us?
You're fucking cat bashers.
Show the knife. Show the knife. Show the knife.
Get away from us.
Show the knife. Show the knife.
Don't touch it.
That's it. That's it. Show the knife.
Don't touch my wings.
Show the knife. That's it.
Don't fucking touch my wings. I stood here fucking 12. We've had fucking factory. She's fucking 12 and you just battered me, mate. Bring like fucking factory.
Yeah, show the knife. Mara.
So that's basically the video, right? And apologies if you hear a little bit of like a rumbling in the background or whatever, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a fan on in the corner of the room and I need it on because it's been boiling. Well, when I tried to record this episode yesterday, I could not stop sweating. I think that's why, because the in the room that I have to record these in, the ventilation is not always the best. Do try to keep the window open, but the ventilation and the quality of the room is not the best, right? Obviously being very, very small in operation, not having a dedicated studio or anything like that. It's difficult to manage, temperature and humidity and all of these other factors, right? And that's why I end up having to scratch my face to no end, right? But this is the image that has been, ingrained in the brain of particularly the Scots, obviously, but every British man, woman at the moment, aside from those who are suicidally empathetic and cheering this on, right? This is the kind of image that's been ingrained in their brain and has spawned all, manner of artistic liberty with, comparing her to the Queen of Scots or the next person that's going to lead the rebellion of Britain, right? All of these things. We'll look at some of the things which I'm talking about in a moment. But this just shows how far we've fallen as a society, doesn't it? And how much we've let both ourselves go in terms of our morals and principles, which is what Andrew was getting at with his post, which is no longer up on X, but I'll read you some of the follow-ups in a moment. But also now how much danger that we're in. And obviously, largely due to a complete political betrayal. This is now the fruits of the harvest that we have sown, the fruits of the seeds that we have sown, right, and have been sown mainly by our political class that have betrayed us time and time and time again in the name of diversity, in the name of inclusion, in the name of all of these other buzzwords, multiculturalism, etc. These people, these disgusting, evil people that are at the heads of bringing these agendas down, don't care how many children have to be sacrificed. These children are evil oppressors anyway, by virtue of things that they have no control over, simply by virtue of where they are born, their ancestry, their skin color, etc. They have unearned privilege and all the rest of it. You're seeing the fruits of the leftist agenda coming through now. The good thing is it is radicalizing more and more people to the cause. You won't get something much more radicalizing than seeing a young girl having to brandish a massive kitchen knife and an axe to defend her younger sister from these disgusting foreign predators Well, the police do nothing, and in many instances now they arrest and charge the young girl and report her to the relevant authorities. With the relevant authorities, we report the disgusting predators to, right? I see. It does seem in many instances now we don't have them. We don't have them, and as a result, these people become emboldened. These people become emboldened, as we'll see from stats with the Telegraph later. Alarming rises in migrant crime, right? But this is what radicalized a lot of people. And if you wanted an image, again, to radicalize people to go even further into the right side, you know, we're already, if you don't have pure adherence to leftist party orthodoxy at this point, you're classed as far right anyway. If you wanted to really radicalize people to going extreme lengths down that road, right, this is a perfect way to do it. This is a perfect way to do it. And the people that were coming here were told they're just the same as us and whatever. They're just dreamers or whatever. They really don't make the best case for themselves and things like this happen, do they? So this is what's been happening in Scotland recently. As you can imagine, there's been international outrage about this. I believe even Elon Musk reposted it. And the stuff that came out of the rape gang inquiry with regards to 85 local councils that we'll be going over later on in the show emerged from Rupert Lowe's inquiry. I believe he also reposted those as well, right? So it is getting international traction. That's why they want to crack down on information so much in this country. Make no mistake, nothing of this nature will make the government, you know, in any way capitulate to what's going on or in any way reverse track in what's going on. They are extremists. They are fanatics. They are religious zealots for this stuff, right? They are religious zealots for this stuff, and they will pursue it at any cost rather. Because obviously we'll be bearing the costs in the end anyway. So this is the incident that happened. Obviously, it's truly tragic and truly, you know, an indictment on the society that we're in. You know, a lot of this would have been, you know, solved with having something like a Second Amendment and stuff like that, and an actually, you know, morally upright nation and stuff like that, and people. But then you do have, again, speaking of foreigners not making good cases for themselves, people like Dilly Hussein, who thought it was prudent in the aftermath of this to instead compare child rape and girls having to use weapons to defend themselves against sexual groomers and rapists to foreigners having to defend themselves against supposedly racist thugs, equating racism and child rape, which, as you can imagine, did not go down very well. This post, by the way, has 177,000 views and only 789 likes on it. The comment to like ratio is insane. It has more comments than likes, right? And somebody commented on it, and in 23,000 views has gained over 5,000 likes. So yeah, tells you a lot about the sentiment with regards to this post. But what he was responding to was Tommy Robinson posted this: weak politicians, authorities, and a full two-tier system rigged against them, a legacy media demonizing the narrative at every given turn in favor of the invader, all under the guise of tolerance. Young girls have been forced to fend for themselves on their own streets. 100% true. And this is the image in question that was shared on that post. So this is an example of the artwork that's coming out at the moment from this incident. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking on screen, there's a Scottish flag in the background of a nice Scottish countryside landscape, right? It looks, you know, was like either a painting or like a pencil drawing, basically. It's in color, and it's a young girl wearing, you know, the black Nike t-shirt, the ripped jeans, and a you know, like a sashy kind of Scottish traditional material, seemingly looped over the shoulder, right? Looks like something out of Braveheart, basically, with blue face paint. Right, blue face paint and an axe in the one hand and a short sword in the other, grimacing as if she's about to go charging into battle, right? These are the kind of things that have been coming out at the moment that people have been either creating or using AI to create, whatever it may be. There was another one that was posted, I believe, in the comments section. Let's see if I can find it now. So this is another type of one that has come out of this incident, and people are really rallying around this. So this is an example, ladies and gentlemen. It's the young girl. It's more like a watercolor kind of painting. It has a Scottish flag painted on her jumper. Again, the short sword in one hand, the axe in the other. It says, "If she can stand, so can you." And a lot of us do need to have more courage. A lot of us are not lacking in courage. For example, we know that the system that's been put in place has been deliberately rigged against us. And we're wondering, in many instances, a lot of people are wondering, what are they supposed to do? Because if they do take action, they'll get thrown in prison. If they do in prison, they can't protect their family anyway. But this is going to happen if they don't do anything, because the criminals are going to feel more emboldened, right? It's why the societal breakdown has been as damaging as it is. And then bringing in people like Dilly, definitely not good for our society, where he says Tommy is justifying the possession of knives and axes in public with intent to use against sexual groomers and rapists. This is the same as someone encouraging Muslims, migrants, people of color to possess knives and axes to defend themselves in public against racist thugs. Obviously, they don't need any kind of racism in order to do that. We saw that happen when people got angry. And people got angry after Southport, when we had basically the latest Islamic terror attack on British soil, which claimed the lives of 3 young girls in one of the most brutal fashions we've ever seen, and injured several more. It didn't take much for the Muslim Defense League, quote unquote, to go out with, weapons and terrorize communities, all in black with balaclavas and all the rest of it, right? These people, let me tell you, these people do not need a reason. And the people that share this, framework of thinking have no place at all in our societies. But our government, for some reason, in our society, is bending over backwards for these people in the name of inclusion, in the name of multiculturalism, in the name of all of these things, to the extent where, now, this broke yesterday, so I wouldn't have actually seen this when this was recorded yesterday. To the extent now, mind you, that one of the most dangerous jihadis has just been released from prison in the UK, and apparently he will not even be deported despite him being the leader of an Al-Qaeda cell that was arrested in England attempting to blow up the London Stock Exchange. A man by the name of Mohammed Shajahan. I hope I'm saying that right for the sake of people being able to go and find this guy and learn more about him, but I really don't care if I'm mispronouncing his name. Here's Patrick Christie's from GB News reporting on this fact that we have decided that we're just going to keep this guy around and let him go free into our communities as if he's going to be in any way reformed, as if he's going to be in any way changed whatsoever. This is the kind of suicidal empathy that we're talking about, that we would inflict this on our own people in the name of what? Tolerance? You got to be fucking kidding me.
Yes, good evening. I can exclusively reveal that one of Britain's most dangerous jihadi terrorists is now a free man.
My name is Mohammed Shah Jahan. I'm 25 years old and I come from Stoke-on-Trent. Many people have called myself a radical, a fundamentalist, maybe a terrorist even sometimes. But if they say that I'm a terrorist because I'm calling for my faith, then fair enough. It doesn't mean nothing to me, because if anything, it shows that I'm on the footstep of the Prophet Muhammad, because he was called a terrorist, a fundamentalist as well.
Yeah. So that is Mohammed Shahjahan. He is the Islamist who tried to blow up the London Stock Exchange, and he has just been released from prison. Yes, that was him appearing in a BBC documentary prior to him being convicted, by the way. He was friends with the Fishmongers Hall jihadi Usman Khan, the Islamist who claimed to have been rehabilitated before stabbing 2 young people to death and being shot dead by police. For some reason...
So there we are, right? Apologies, when I realised I had my microphone muted in order to not have the fan sound in the background interfering with that. This kind of stuff we're dealing with. We're literally a perfect example there. The second guy that he mentions, I don't know his name, I've forgotten his name, something Khan, wasn't it? Saying that he'd been rehabilitated and then went on to attack 2 people, right? And you saw the footage of it there, I believe. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Or more prudently, why are our political class doing this? Obviously, they see these people because we've done everything, which is going to lead us on to my next point, in the name typically, or in the name rather, of feminism, and rejecting the society that we had for 2,000 years or whatever, rejecting the societal norms that we had for 2,000 years that actually led to society being what it was and actually continuing and not extinguishing its own existence, right? In the name of rejecting that, in the name of things like progress, right? Progressivism and feminism and all of this stuff, right? We've now... I kind of lost my train of thought there for a minute. We upended our society, and are now bending over backwards for these people who are not, there we go, who are not taking themselves out of the gene pool by, having 200,000+ at the moment abortions every year, right? That are killing off 23 or nearly 30%, 28% of the generation, my generation that should have been here, right? We're talking 800 to 900 million people that are not here because they were terminated in the womb. Right. And it wasn't, Muslims like this doing that. Right. They are actually a very pro-natal culture. Right. That's why they want to bring them in. They are bending over backwards for foreign families to bring them here whilst they're trying to extinguish yours. Right. That should tell you all you need to know. It's a foreign government that we have in this country. Which is why what we're going to talk about next is a bit of a double-edged sword and tightrope to walk on, because I think people have valid points. People who are bringing up criticisms of what this person had to say, and also then, understanding the wider point that's being made, and even so saying that it wasn't the best take. Admittedly, the take where it was a 14-year-old girl having to defend herself from foreign attackers, from foreign predators, was not the best example to use to make this argument, potentially. But nonetheless, the argument still stands. That, feminism and the rejection of everything that made our society what it was, that would have prevented everything that we're seeing now, and our adoption of it and our religious-like adherence to it has created the problems. And namely, there's a certain group that are now clamoring for protection from groups that they spent years demonizing for simply wanting to do the basic things of contributing to their society and contributing to their families, right? They were demonized, called evil oppressors for wanting to do basic things that were morally good, right? Woe to those who call good evil and evil good. And then when the shit hits the fan, when you start reaping the poison fruit, you start running to those people to protect you from what's coming next. That's the point, in my opinion, that Andrew was making when he said this about this incident. The problem is that now the post itself is unavailable for whatever reason. I'm not sure whether Andrew took it down or whatever, but I did actually, I'll see if I can pull it up now. Oh, that was the wrong one. I did give my 2 cents on it, because I think a lot of people, I understand why they would get so angry about it. So Andrew basically said, I was quoting saying, men come and protect us, no, reap what you sow. And it was a picture of the young girl. So again, not the best example, but nonetheless, the point still is worth going over. And that is that I'm going to read out his post that he made, quoting his post originally in a moment, and we got some examples to further corroborate it. Is that women want men's help against men. They don't have the requisite force to protect themselves and are like lambs to the slaughter. I often ask what women could do if men decided to put them in rape cages. What could they do about it? Well, the UK is an example of a giant rape cage, and it turns out they can do very little. Now, instantly, people are going to think that Andrew is advocating for women to be put in rape cages. Obviously, that's not the point that's being made. The point is just a very stark and, I suppose, different way of wording the regular point, that is, men and women are not the same. Men and women are not the same, and men have certain advantages that make them more suited to do certain things in society. And women, namely, have certain things that make them more suited to doing certain things in society as well. And the reason feminism has been so destructive is that it completely inverted those and pit men and women against each other, when previously they were working together to create a good, prosperous society, with the nuclear family being the bedrock of that society, a nuclear family accountable and made in the eyes of God, that was the bedrock of a virtuous and prosperous society. And many people now are going to say that, well, this is Andrew justifying everything that's going on in the UK. It's a very, it's just somebody not showing sympathy for the bed that we made ourselves, right, in many instances, from greater adoption of the feminist movement and stuff like that. Where it does get tangled up, however, is that especially in the last 15 years, at a bare minimum, people saw the problems, people saw the writing on the wall and stuff like that, and people actively voted against it, and that vote was not adhered to. So this is where I understand people then having very valid criticisms of this, because we actually did, in many instances, we actually did try to vote against it. And you do have, however, just in a moment, particularly women, particularly feminist women, down with the patriarchy, those kind of demonizing men types who want to do just the basic things and understanding that men and women have duties, roles, responsibilities, right? And dare say that women would have to do the same, right? They're not empowering the boss babes, so to speak. Now they're reaping what they're sowing. And in many instances, you're an adult, you voted for this, right? Why should we show you any sympathy, right? You're getting what you wanted. You're getting what you wanted. It's forced doctrine, as he points out. It's forced doctrine. And girls with daggers aren't going to stop it. I'm quoting from Andrew. No, these are not my words. I'm quoting from Andrew. Women spearhead the empathy side of politics, and this is what the natural conclusion of Western egalitarianism and empathy-first policies. You can be mad at me all you want, but I will tell you a truth that isn't fun to confront. Women have removed, quote-unquote, the protectors from their lives and girl boss and, quote, "da need no man," unquote. They removed fathers from the homes of their children and demanded to be equal in political enfranchisement. When shit goes wrong, they instantly demand men come and save them from their plight. Hard to argue. Hard to argue in many instances. Because many of these people, some of Andrew's interactions with Julie Bindel, for example, spring to mind on Piers Morgan, where, again, Julie Bindel will be all men, not looking in the mirror in any way. And that's why I think for all of the evil that has been done to us that is outside of our control, we do need, as individuals, this is going to come from as individuals, looking in the mirror and understanding where we went wrong. And that's the main point that's being made here. That's the main point that's being made here. Because he actually says, truth is, the men in the UK don't have too much fear, right? And many of them don't, okay? Some of them are rightfully concerned that what will happen is they'll get arrested and they'll get taken away from their families, and that will make them all the more defenseless, right? By the Stasi political police force that we have, right? That could happen, which is stopping some from doing it. But those who in many instances have no choice, they're an animal backed up against the wall, they really have no choice. They're chomping at the bit to go after these people. Make no mistake, people are the most radicalized they've ever been, especially young men in these areas, especially young men. They want to take the fight. Make no mistake about it. Because the immigrants themselves, if you look at them in many instances, are generally weaker and aren't raping men. Some of them are, right? We've covered an instance, I believe it was outside a church. I think it was either in Britain or possibly in France. I can't remember exactly, where a 60-year-old man was raped by another migrant man, I believe it was. Men have already gotten together in many parts of the nation that collectively kick the shit out of the immigrant population if it looks at them cross-eyed, like the soccer hooligans. It's the women who need to be afraid, and they are afraid. The only thing is then they won't take the necessary step, seemingly a lot of them won't, and realize that they also have played a part in this, by getting what they want. They played a part in this, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with that because they're not equipped in most instances to deal with it. It's the thing, the average man is going to be stronger than the average woman by orders of magnitude. Right? And you will get, exceptionally strong women, for example, women who are wired differently and all of these things, but the exception doesn't prove the rule. And we shouldn't be making the rule for society based on the exceptions. And that's what we have been doing. That's why our population has declined. That's why the family structure, you say anything now about, maybe we should aspire to have good family structures, people in my community, for example, and people recoil as if you've read them the fucking gospel. People recoil as if you've read the gospel to a demon a lot of the time. Because this egalitarian framework has become so ingrained that, again, it just sits in your mind like a religious dogma you don't even think about. But the minute somebody says anything that encroaches on it, you react as if you're, somebody's said something awful about your loved one, for example, right? And the fact of the matter is, at least from the way I see it, again, this implies that everyone is being morally virtuous and upright and understanding their roles and responsibilities. A morally upright, to a large extent, ethnically homogenous, right? Patriarchal society is the best antidote for these kinds of things, but many people aren't willing to admit that. That's the point that Andrew was making. Maybe, at least the way I see it, maybe just not the best post to do it on when it's a 14-year-old girl. and it's a 14-year-old girl, because many people then misconstrued him saying that, oh yeah, the 14-year-old girl comes to the father, father, help me. And then they go, oh no, you deserve to be raped. He's not saying that. And if you know anything about Andrew and his family, you know that they've experienced tragedy. This is one of the things I said in my post. They've experienced not necessarily things that are related to this, but they've been open about it, and how they lost one of their children. They lost one of their sons in a freak accident, right? They lost one of their sons in a freak accident when he was over a friend's house, right? So they are no stranger to tragedy when it comes to children. They've had it in their own family, right? So they're not wishing, at least from what I can see, any, ill will, any tragedy, any disgusting atrocity to come upon these girls. Literally saying, a lot of the people that are now clamoring, being like, where are all the good men gone, so to speak, are the ones that directly brought this upon themselves. And unless they're now going to understand their part in it, they should basically shut the fuck up and lie in the bed that they made, or reap the poison fruit that they spent so long sowing, despite the warnings, the numerous warnings that they were given that they did not want to heed, because they thought they were so holier than thou and enlightened in their progressive pursuits, which ironically have turned us into more of a Stone Age society than a modern, in any way, shape or form, utopian one. And he is right in many instances. Here are some examples, right, of women in particular who are some of the most ardent acolytes of the anti-British, suicidally empathetic ideology that has spawned a lot of the things now that they're clamoring for men to defend them from. Makes you think, why? Why should men go out to the street and get mauled by a pack of foreign dogs, essentially, right, with how they jump on people in mass numbers and literally, maul the shit out of them in many instances, right? I'm using dogs as a metaphor here. Obviously, no doubt I'll probably get taken down for that, right? No doubt the police probably at my door for saying that. But when they descend on a person like a pack, right, and they all band together on their own sectarian bases, right? Why should a man go and fight and die and put himself in that situation for a woman like this, right? Which is a worldview that this woman is going to espouse now, is what a lot of women share.
So in honor of seeing English flags everywhere, the Union Jack, make Britain again, that I've seen all over Facebook. I'm going to say something to you. Britain has never been British. Britain has always been based on other cultures, countries, influence of immigrants. But now you've got absolutely everything that you can get from immigrants. You've robbed off them. You've took absolutely everything that they have. You want to send them back. And that's what Britain's about, robbing off other cultures. Immigrants put our kids in danger. No, they don't. White British people just do the exact same things that immigrants do, but it's just never in the media. You want to know why it's never in the media? Because the media knows what it's doing. It doesn't want to make the hero look bad. I'm not saying all immigrants are good people, but not all white British people are good people either, and this is what people need to get in their head. Why aren't people getting this vocal?
She's so close yet so far. Because as we know, ladies and gentlemen, the media never hesitate to jump on a story where there's a horrendous white perpetrator or whatever. They never, ever hesitate. Not to mention there's none of the constraints around, prejudicing trials or anything like that when it comes to a regular white British person that there is for some reason when it comes to some foreign national or whatever, or some import, some second generation, import or whatever. Like Axel Rudicabana, right? The media will circulate all manner, right? And this is the thing. I'll see if I can find the post in a moment of how the media reports it. Let me see if it came up. Let me see if I can find it. I won't be able to find it, but it came up and it says how the media reports, wasters, basically, when it is a white person versus when it is a foreigner when it comes to degeneracy. And it was basically, they'll call the white person a degenerate when it's an old man, right? It's an old man who sat there in like a train carriage, for example, and it's a close-up of his face and he's got his head down in his phone or whatever, and he looks stereotypically like an old, racist, ugly white person, basically. But then they won't report it being a degenerate when a foreigner walks onto a train and exposes himself in front of a bunch of women, children, and families, right? So this is the thing. This is how the media will report it, but they don't hesitate. They don't hesitate to jump on the case when it is something that suits their political agenda. So she is right. The media knows what they're doing, but she's completely wrong in the application. But again, this person has just as much of a say in determining the fate of everybody else as anybody else does, right? And quite clearly she's operating from a completely false framework, and not to mention a suicidally empathetic, country-destroying, framework. And she's not alone. She's not alone, which this video will also show you now, ladies and gentlemen, where you have these three females, presumably it's hard to tell in the case of one of them, that have been brainwashed again into hating their own flag, right? The flag that their previous generations fought and died under for the very freedom that they are using to disparage them now, right? So they tear it down from a lamppost and spend time stamping on it and all the rest of it. And I start understanding now, when you see things like this, why so many people now have turned, like, for example, Matt Walsh, whether you agree with the stance or not, have turned now and changed their mind on flag burning, for example, because they've seen that it's a blatant double standard. If you were to do this with a pride flag, right, or any other kind of minority flag, right, if there's a flag for anti-racism or whatever, or if you were to do this with the Indian flag or the Pakistani flag or whatever other flag it is, you get pulled up on a hate crime. But you can do it with the Union Jack and St. George's Cross and Welsh flag and whatever else, and it's perfectly fucking fine. I'm not okay with that double standard. None of us should be. Okay, if it's not okay to desecrate one, right, if one is protected, all is protected. That's the way that it should be. If one is protected, all is protected. And if one is not protected, then all should be unprotected, so to speak, with regards to flags and stuff like that. But you wonder why we're in so much trouble that we're in. This is large aspects of the young generation. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, the flag is actually slightly ripped anyway, but they jump up, barely manage to reach it, and they pull it down. That's what I mean. You can see the one, it's kind of hard to tell. Presumably it's three ladies, but it's kind of hard to tell. Throws it on the ground and spends time stamping on it. I hope they feel better. Whatever's going on, I just hope they feel better. Because it's making no difference, right? It's making no difference. Make no mistake. With how much they're seeing it's having an effect, with how much they're seeing it's angering people like this, right? People go out and pull those flags back up. Make no mistake about it. And rightfully so. It's only going to radicalize people more and more and more. But this is an example, as George Orwell pointed out, of people that spend no end of time posting this in the comments now. It says, it's always the women, above all the young ones, who are the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of slogans, the amateur spies. Exactly what you're seeing now. They had the distinctive uniforms in 1984. In this instance, you're seeing whatever, ragtag of maybe JD Sports or whatever it is, get up they can throw together. But these are the kinds of people that will spell the downfall of our society, and we wonder why, for example, young men see this and, they don't want to get married to these people. They don't want to spend any time around these people, especially young men. This is the thing that Jordan B. Peterson pointed out. The more egalitarianism has forced, this equality, if you will, or equity or equalization between men and women in all of these aspects, the more it's magnified the differences, right? So egalitarianism, in the way that it's been put forward, has been so dangerous. It's made, because it's removed men and women's complementarity to each other, it's rendered them so different. That's why young people struggle with dating nowadays. That's why all of these things, because they don't understand what their role, responsibility, and ultimate authority in the matter is, right? Because it's been deliberately removed from them. Never forget what they stole from you if you're part of the young generation. And it's up to you to fight for it to get it back. It's up for us to fight for it to get it back. Okay? That's why the voice and actions are very, very important. For all the people that say your voice is not important, make no mistake, it is. Make no mistake, it is. That's why I thank you guys again for helping me with getting my voice out there, in the hope that, as I said, this will form the basis for a long time run in the battle that we're in. But again, the stats don't even back them up. This is the thing. The stats don't even back them up. So this is alarming, coming out of Vox Populi. Reported this on X now, for example. I want you to bear these stats in mind, ladies and gentlemen, when you see the footage that you just saw of the young girls, young ladies tearing down their country, tearing down their fellow man, saying that their fellow man are evil and all of this stuff, right? And basically, again, making themselves chickens of KFC, if you will. And remember as well, when the chickens come home to roost, Remember it when the chickens come home to roost. The sexual offences, and this just speaks to the degeneracy of the UK, and where Andrew is completely right to say that it's basically one giant rape cage, right? Sexual offence convictions have increased faster for foreign nationals versus British nationals, right? Versus British citizens. In 2021, or over the 2021 to 2024 period, by nationality, sexual offences rose 39.3% for native Brits. However, it rose 62.2% for foreign nationals. This is what that graph looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Vox Populi have very nicely, put this into a graph, which I'll bring up on screen for you now. And it also shows the alarming trends in theft and robbery as well. So as you can see on screen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking, sexual offence convictions have increased faster for foreign nationals versus the British guys. 39.3% versus 62.2%. Now, the fact of the matter is if we have, an increase in sex crimes, if we're having an increase in sex crimes of nearly 40%, right, that is degeneracy in and of itself. That's something we need to sort out personally. All right. We need to sort out personally. But it does speak to the difference that we have between foreign nationals and ourselves, right? Also with theft, for example, you only go to the capital of London to see this and all the lies that Sadiq Khan told about the crime stats and everything like that. 55.8% for British, 77.9% for foreigners, and then robbery 2.8%, I believe that is, or is it 2.9, 2.8 and 18.9% for foreign nationals. Very, very alarming stats. And it also is very, very alarming stats and very, very alarming for many people's narratives when you look at where these people are coming from, right? So the highest number of sexual offence convictions by nationality in the UK actually belong to Indians. Which plays right into the hands of the people that want to, a lot of people who, they get called civic nationalists, right? And say, we have problems with Muslims and we have problems with Pakistanis, but everyone else is fine. Well, the number one sexual offence conviction by nationality was Indian, right? So instantly a spanner is thrown in the works of that narrative, right? Then you have Romanians, Poles, then you have Pakistanis, then you have Afghans, Nigerians, and then you have the Sudanese. So that's top seven. That was, I believe, the top seven. I believe that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. So it meant that 1 in 7 of sexual offence convictions last year came from foreigners. That's what we're talking about here, which is mad considering that, again, you'd expect the majority of people to be convicted for these crimes would be British, because the British still make up the majority of the population on these isles. The government is doing everything they can to change that. But again, it throws a bit of a spanner in the works where you say it's only 1 in 7. Yeah, but how much of the population these people make up, you really think it should be a lot less. It should be a lot less than that, right? Supposedly if we're all the same and stuff like that. But we have this article from the Telegraph. Foreigners account for more than 1 in 7 sexual offence convictions last year, including rapes. Foreign nationals accounted for 1 in 7, 14.1% of sexual offence convictions last year, including rapes, according to the Ministry of Justice data drawn from the Police National Computer. The rate of increase between 2021 and 2024 is higher than for British nationals, whose sexual offence convictions rose by 39.3% over the same period. We obviously need to do something about that. Okay, that speaks to a massive level of degeneracy and evil that seemingly for some reason that we are tolerating, right? And again, this indicts massively the police and the judiciary, in my opinion, but also the societal and moral attitudes that we need to start having a look at in the mirror and understanding who we are accountable to, obviously. Similar pattern emerged for other offences, where convictions for theft by foreign nationals have risen by 77.9% since 2021 against 55.8% for British nationals. Robbery convictions recorded for foreign nationals increased by 18.9% against 2.8% by British nationals. Comes from the think tank Centre for Migration Control, and it follows record highs in net migration of up to 906,000 gained in 2023 and a surge in Channel migrant crossings. So far this year, about 20, I'm just going to round up for the sake of example because it's only 3 people, 28,000 migrants have reached the UK in small boats, the highest number in any year since the first arrivals in 2018. Remember this, for example, when the government wants to convince you that they're doing something about the small boat crossing problem. And obviously the small boat crossing problem is a very small in comparison problem versus the much larger problem of legal immigration, which has been weaponized by the government to overthrow people's democratic rights in pursuit of the globalist utopia, so to speak, the globalist multicultural utopia. And sadly, that is going to involve a lot of denaturalization and deportation. You know, sadly, because a lot of people, they may have just come here seeking a better life and all of these things, right? The fact of the matter is the government has wielded them as a weapon. You know, the government has used them as a human shield for their initiatives, if you will. Again, think about comparing our government, right, to certain other organizations that will use people as human shields quite literally, right? Then you understand we're dealing with a completely illegitimate government that is ruling by iron fist. Right? It's ruling by iron fist. So there was another article which they linked, however, true scale of foreign sex offenders in Britain. Ministry of Justice publishes new figures following calls for transparency about the scale of migrant crime. Record numbers of foreign sex offenders and violent criminals are being held in jails in England and Wales. Some 1,331 foreign national sex offenders were in prison as of June this year, up 9.9%, nearly 10% in 12 months. The rate of increase was nearly 3 times that of Britain's, with the number imprisoned for sex offences up 3.8%. 3.8%. The number of foreign violent offenders held in jails is also at its highest since records began a decade ago. It has risen by 8.8% in a year to 3,250, nearly double the rate of 4.8% for Britons imprisoned for violence. These foreign nationals account for 1 in 8, 12.3% of the 87,000 prisoners in England and Wales, the highest number in at least a decade and the second highest proportion on record, just down from 12.5% in 2021. They account, by foreign nationals, for more than 1 in 10, so 10.6% of sex offenders, and more than 1 in 10, also 10.5%, of prisoners held for violence against the person. Another thing we have to shine a light on with regards to this is how complicit our local authorities and how our public services are in these atrocities, right? So this broke recently as well from the Rape Gang Inquiry page on X. Rupert Lowe posted the following, detailing 85 local authorities in which gang-based sexual exploitation of children either is taking place or has historically done so, in one of the most comprehensive exposés of the rape gang scandal to date. So, this is from the letter, or the cover letter or whatever it is, the statement posted on X from the Rape Gang Inquiry. The Rape Gang Inquiry has identified 85 local authorities in which the gang-based sexual exploitation of children is taking place or has historically done so. Hundreds of brave survivors, family members and whistleblowers have approached the Rape Gang Inquiry since our launch, each with unique stories. However, patterns of targeted exploitation by predominantly Pakistani males combined with gross negligence from public bodies are identifiable. Further research following the submission of thousands of Freedom of Information requests by our data investigation team has enabled the Rape Gang Inquiry to produce one of the most comprehensive exposés of the national-wide scandal to date. Separate inquiry team has traveled the country gathering evidence and speaking with survivors, family members and whistleblowers. Our staff includes a qualified support specialist therapist with decades of experience dealing with vulnerable individuals. Cases have been identified from across the United Kingdom, from Aberdeen to Plymouth, Antrim to Canterbury, and some going as far back as the 1960s. Sad thing is that more will exist outside of this list, which I hope they do uncover, because we do have some troubling things to talk about in a moment, particularly if you live in Wales. There are 3 constituencies, 3 local authorities that have been identified as covering up the sexual abuse of children that was perpetrated predominantly by Pakistani males. And what I'm going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, so that, again, We understand that, yes, we do have massive problems with, imported problems, quite literally, but we do have to look at not only how those imported problems have infiltrated the way into these local authorities and have thus contributed to the problem that way, but also obviously, again, holding up the mirror to ourselves and realizing the ways that we are rather complicit in some of our outlook, right, with regards to this. Particularly if you're a suicidally empathetic, hyper empathetic, down with the patriarchy feminist, so to speak, who have enabled this via their adherence to the orthodoxy that they have brought in. And I think it can have a hard time with the humility of realizing what their ideology has led to. So if you look at the history and the origins of feminism, you always understand that it was a satanic, evil, satanic, disgusting ideology. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read off to you every single authority so far that has been identified in this rape gang inquiry. And I just want to know, again, if there'd be more to come, particularly, obviously, in Wales, if my constituency will come up. Luckily, at the moment at least, it's not on this list. Thank God for that. We've been quite lucky in many instances from what I can understand. People are noticing the problems now, but we've been quite lucky in many instances so far that we haven't been turned into a community like Luton or other places like that where they've been completely upended and the demographic has been completely, shifted. We've had nothing less really than ethnic cleansing in many of these places. So I'm going to read you them off now, ladies and gentlemen. There'll probably be a timestamp down in the description or whatever, or a chapter you can fast forward to if you want to just skip, if you want to just look at the sources in the description and skip and go look at the list yourself to save a bit of time. But this is for you, in case your local authority comes up and you can then go take them to task as well. Maybe you can ask a few questions of your local councillor or your MS or your MP, right? So we have, in alphabetical order, Aberdeen City, Angus, Antrim and Newton Abbey, Argyll and Bute, Barnsley, Bexley, Birmingham, Blackburn with Darwen, Blackpool, Bradford, Brent, Bristol, City of Bromley. Again, this list is kind of formatted not the best, so I don't know if that's one thing that's meant to be there. I'm assuming it's two, so I'm assuming it's Bristol, City of Bromley, Buckinghamshire, Burnley, Calderdale, Camden, Canterbury, Chelmsford, Cherwell, Cheshire East, Cheshire West and Cheshire, City of Edinburgh, Coventry, Croydon, Cumberland, Dacorum, Derby, Doncaster, Dorset, East Hertfordshire, East Staffordshire, Glasgow City, Greenwich, Hammersmith and Fulham, Havering, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Hillingdon, Hounslow, Kingston upon Hull, City of Kirklees, Lambeth, Leeds, Leicester, Lewisham, Luton, Manchester, Medway, Merton, Middlesbrough, Monmouthshire, Newcastle upon Tyne, Newham, North Tyneside, North Yorkshire, Northumberland, Norwich, Nottingham, Oldham, Oxford, Pembrokeshire, Peterborough, Plymouth, Preston, Bredbridge, Rochdale, Rossendale, Rotherham, Sheffield, Somerset, Stockport, Stoke-on-Trent, Swansea, Telford and Wrekin, Tower Hamlets, Vale of the White Horse, Wakefield, Wandsworth, Warrington, Watford, West Berkshire, Westmoreland and Furness, Wirral, Worcester, and Wyre Forest. Those are the 85 that have been listed so far, ladies and gentlemen. Now, again, I know some of my followers are from. I've got a feeling that some of you may be listening to this will be located, obviously, within these constituencies, within these authorities. And hope that it's given you the, especially with the sources down below that have been identified, the impetus where maybe we can start taking our local authorities and our, quote-unquote elected leaders to account. Particularly, I was surprised to see some of the constituencies on there that I saw, particularly in Wales, especially Monmouthshire. I was surprised to see Monmouthshire on there, but then when I saw it and I thought about some of the things, thought about the outlook of the people that tend to live there and stuff like that, the surprise sort of went away. I wasn't surprised to see Swansea on there whatsoever. Having been through Swansea recently, it's no surprise. It's no surprise whatsoever. I was surprised so far not to see Cardiff on there. So obviously Cardiff have been alleged to have massive grooming gang problems as well, or rape gang problems as well. But this is obviously very, very alarming. It's obviously very, very alarming. But it's good to know now that, because it's been privately, it's a private inquiry. It's not something that's been politicized by the government, so to speak, that we're actually getting some workable information now in one of the most comprehensive ways that it's been done. So I certainly hope that they continue to be able to push us out more information so that we can continue to hold our elected leaders to account, particularly because of how dangerous a lot of these people are. Make no mistake, they are dangerous. Because they'll happily go out in support of these people. The people operating on their own sectarian bases will happily go out and support their fellow people engaging in these crimes. Tells you a lot when you hear stories from the rape gangs of Pakistanis that would kidnap girls off of the streets, right? Take them back to this house to be abused, right? And they could phone up, several of their friends to be like, oh, I've got this young girl here. Should we all rape her? And they all come along super excited to do so. Like, yeah, fuck yeah, white trash. That's what these white girls are for. Tells you a lot about this. Tells you a lot about the communities, don't they? And why entire communities need to go. When people say that Reform recently published a quote-unquote deportations plan and said that for their first term they were going to target 600,000, it's not going to even scratch the surface. And Rupert Lowe knows that and why he's been so vocal on it. He's saying millions must go. It's absolutely true. Millions must go from a lot of our areas. Make no mistake about it. It tells you a lot. When immigration has been allowed to come in the high hundreds of thousands to millions every year, right? Illegally, because again, you can say that, oh, well, they came here legally. Yeah, but the system that allowed them to come here is illegal. So they're still coming here illegally. It's just they don't know it. Ones coming across on the boats, they know that they're coming here illegally, right? The ones that are coming here legally might not even know that they're coming here illegally because they're benefiting from a system that should not be in place. And if democracy and the rule of the people is to be respected, is not allowed to be put in place. So therefore it is illegal, right? Even if we call it legal, right? These people happily come out in support of their own people, just like they did after Southport, and just like they did of a recent incident, which I believe this is after some of the quote-unquote far-right, far-right activities. But the funny thing is, it's not funny at all, but the funny thing is about the timing with regards to this, is that with all the protests that have been going on, and this was posted not long after a woman in her 20s was raped in Canary Wharf, allegedly by a migrant, potentially from the hotel there, right? The Britannia Hotel there. But this is an example of these people, particularly foreign Muslims, that will band together in their own sectarian interests, right? Gathering on the Isle of Dogs and doing a quote-unquote peaceful demonstration or whatever, peaceful community walk in response to the recent far-right activities in the Docklands area of East London. And it was a show of unity to those who want to intimidate local communities. These people go on about unity, shows of unity and stuff like that. There's been nothing more dividing in a community than these people coming in and enforcing their religious ideology and enforcing their customs on the local people, right? That's more than enough to cause division. So they can go on about unity all they want. These people are not about unity, right? Muslims are so concerned with minority rights when they are in the minority, but the minute they're not in the minority, you don't have minority rights anymore, some people will say. Here's the footage of that quote-unquote community walk, ladies and gentlemen, where they're walking through the streets in this massive group against the far right and Zionism, of course. So you see them walking. After weeks of far right and Zionist agitation, Tower Hamlets residents came out in a show of force. It was peaceful, but it's a show of force to reassure the community and warn against outside agitators. We will not let them divide our community. Now, in Tower Hamlets, obviously, you have enough of these people here to where, they are relatively unified in it. Tower Hamlets has been, many instances directly taken over by these people, right? They've been directly taken over in many instances. There's been large demographic replacement. There's been large importation of Islam, right, which is one of the most dangerous ideologies to our lands. Make no mistake about it, because they see us as infidels and they see us as second-class citizens. We should be forced to pay jizya whilst we are subdued. That's why I hate that when I see, supposed Christians then simping for Muslims. They say that they worship Jesus and all of these things. I'd be like, bro, the minute they get in the majority, they're going to make you pay jizya with all the rest of us. So what the hell are you doing? Doing it just because you hate Jews. And admittedly, that brings me to one of the criticisms. I think it was a criticism, not really so much a criticism that I'm taking to heart or anything like that, by the way, but in the last episode where I talked about the Orthodox Jewish group that went up to a monument in North Wales and destroyed it and made a Star of David out of it, that cross that was made out of rocks that stood for 50 years, that I was very, very angry about it, obviously, in the same way that I would be if any foreigner went and done this. Doesn't matter that they were Jews, obviously. And I think that the person saying that I was a bit too harsh, I suppose, on Jews as a whole, and saying that they were not just, a bunch of stupid idiots or whatever. I think it's important to obviously report things as they are. But I was more so concerned, at least of what I tried to bring across, I'm more so concerned with how much is going to play into the hands of, real National Socialists that, would seem to want to do a lot of harm to these people if they weren't able to conduct some kind of peaceful remigration or something like that. It was playing right into the hands of their propaganda, saying that, Jews need to be remigrated as much as Muslims do and stuff like that. I would have the question to those people who would say that, what would you do if it was a ethnic British person that then wanted to pursue Judaism as a religion? That would be my next question, right? They thought that the Judaism was true and they wanted to do that. What would you do with that person, right? Because you have ethnic Jews and then you have, just religious Jews, people who might be of any ethnic background but want to follow Judaism because they believe it's true, right? But again, it played right into the hands that the foreigners, right? This group of Orthodox Jews seemingly coming over and desecrating our monuments, right? Desecrating our monuments and putting them into their symbols, right, in a land that is not theirs, right, plays right into the hands of those people. That's why I wanted to bring that up, that I was concerned about that as well, as much as I was angry that this group of whoever the hell that they thought they fucking were should face some kind of criminal punishment for it, because it was a public monument that they had no right to touch. It's not their land. It's not the land of their people or whatever. They had no right to touch it. They had no right to remove things and put them into different orders. They had absolutely no right to do it, and we have every right to be angry about it. And there should be some kind of criminal charge, in my opinion, or some kind of charge brought down on them. Minimum some kind of fine or something like that. But admittedly, I think I did go, a little bit. I was very hard at the time. I did go a little bit potentially too far. Potentially then extrapolating it to all Jews or whatever. So again, perfectly valid criticism, and I do see things like that. I don't see all the comments, obviously, but I do see things like that, and I appreciate you guys leaving them. And not doing so as well, obviously, in a disparaging way. Then with other people will, leave criticism, quote unquote, with insults to character and all stuff like that. This person didn't do that. It was just an observation, which I greatly appreciate. Thank you very much. The question, however, the story in question that the commenter brought up that I talked about, where the police launch an urgent probe as woman in her 20s is raped in Canary Wharf in the early hours, was reported by the Daily Mail on the 25th of August. Police have launched an urgent investigation after a young woman was taken to hospital after an alleged rape in Canary Wharf. Emergency services were called to reports of a reported sexual assault on Hertsmere Road, East London, at 4:25 a.m. on Saturday, August 23rd. Sadly, that's my birthday, so I'm very, 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 very sorry for this woman. I feel very, very sorry for this woman anyway. Just an unfortunate observation for me that it happened in the early hours of my birthday. A woman who was in her 20s was taken to hospital by the London Ambulance Services, now being supported by specialist officers. No arrests have been made, however, the force is urgently appealing to anybody with information. So it was on Hertsmere Road, Canary Wharf, and many people obviously were taking this up, insinuating that it was likely one of the usual suspects, so to speak, but there's no information on that at the moment. But it's kind of funny how, again, they came out in a show of force not long after a woman was raped in an area that we know that there's a migrant hotel, and we have obviously the fiasco that happened with the Britannia Hotel before, right? Where this man went into this girl's flat, right? She was in there with her heavily immunocompromised mother and refused to leave and had his hand over his crotch, allegedly, basically giving away all of the red flags that, look, I'm going to do something horrible right now. And again, just adds more fuel to the fire, right? Adds more fuel to the fire that have been stoked for a long while now, and that have been burning for a long while. And sooner or later, they are absolutely going to burn out of control. It's going to burn out of control. This is going to be the number one. This is going to be the number one thing that is on the mind of anybody who's been paying attention come 2029. If we even have anything resembling a democracy before that point, if the Starmer government doesn't fall by that point. Because then you have stories like this. Pakistani asylum seeker, again, quote-unquote asylum seeker, right? Because we know a lot of these people, they're not coming over as genuine asylum seekers, right? They're not genuine asylum seekers. And even one of them allegedly told the press in the UK that the government could stop this if they wanted to. They're choosing not to, right? But we know that a lot of them are not asylum seekers. They're not fleeing persecution or anything like that. One of them was allegedly asylum seeker from Tanzania that came here recently, right? In Tanzania, you can book to go on a holiday, right? Tanzania, you can book to go on a bastard holiday, right? There's no, kind of very itchy nose. There's no active war going on in Tanzania or anything like that at the moment, but yet they're still claiming asylum from this area. Shows you how weaponized and how politicized that the asylum system, quote unquote, has become. Which ultimately, the really sad thing is, not only for Britain, but the sad thing is that it makes people suspicious of anybody's asylum claims. So then the people, again, this is the illegal immigration debate in America, for example. If you have such an open border, it actually ruins people's claims, and they actually do want to claim asylum because they're being grouped in with all of these other people that are just trying to game the system. It actually makes their claim a lot less credible. So the people who actually need the help, they're far less likely to get it. Right? Because of how much the system has been gamed. That's also what you see. So people who might genuinely need help are potentially going to have that avenue that they could get help from closed off to them because of how much it's being taken advantage of, usually by economic chances. So a Pakistani asylum seeker has appeared in court after being accused of repeatedly raping an 8-year-old girl. It's being accused that Cameron Khan, 43, raped the child twice between September 2024 and July 2025 before forcing her to watch a third person engage in sexual activity. He made the 8-year-old make him... I don't even know if I can read that. This bit may be cut out of the podcast, potentially on YouTube or whatever. Because, again, I haven't had any, community violation or, terms of service violation for saying things as they are, right? Reporting things as they are. It just says here, he made the 8-year-old make him ejaculate and also put his hand and penis on her genitals, it is claimed. Khan of Streatham Road in South London denied the two counts of rape in a London Crown Court alleged to have taken place in the borough of Lambeth. Further denied 2 counts of causing a child to watch a sex act, 4 counts of sexually assaulting a child, and 2 counts of causing a child under 13 to engage in sexual activity. The interpreter held his head in his hands as he entered his not guilty plea. The accused held his head in his hands as he entered his not guilty pleas, aided by an Urdu interpreter. That interpreter being funded by the taxpayer for this, again, alleged disgusting child rapist shows how much, if anything, that the taxpayer is being fleeced at every single turn. But we'll see what happens. But apparently, I think he's been released. No, he was remanded in custody. That's good, at least. He was remanded in custody of his 7-day trial, ahead of his 7-day trial on January 5th next year. So at least he's one of the ones that is, and again, it makes you think, why is he being held on remand when so many others have been let out? Maybe there is some good evidence to suggest that this actually did happen, and that the judge that he got actually was like, no, we can't let this person out. They're too much of a danger to the community. That tells you a lot. No, obviously, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, though in the society that we live in, it seems a lot of it is now guilty until proven innocent. That, again, a lot here to go on to say that this likely. Again, I'm not saying it is, but likely is true. And we got to think of the values as well that these that kids are growing up with, and why, again, it comes back to us being a virtuous, upright, and understanding the true moral law, so to speak, and where it comes from. This is a story that came out of Vienna recently, and just goes to show that the levels that degeneracy can really lead to, and how much these things can really come back to hurt you and to bite you. And again, how we should be doing and should be taking a lot of note on the, influences, particularly of the youth nowadays, what is influencing them, and the key role of parents in their lives, and understanding the school system as well, and the people that reside within it, because they're not all good people, I can tell you that. Although you can feel sorry for the teacher to a certain extent. She did deserve to face justice in some way, but it's hard to argue that she should have been made to face this. A 7-member youth gang raped an Austrian teacher, burned her apartment down, and even beheaded a dead animal on video with a machete, according to prosecutors. The youths are now standing trial, accused of abusing the teacher, who is in her late 20s. They were aged 14 to 17. The victim told police that she had consensual sex with one of the underage students in April 2024, and he was only 16 at the time. From there, her sexual relationship spiraled. Prosecutors say the teen later showed up to the apartment with other youths who called themselves the Lysing Gang. They then said that they had blackmail material on the teacher after she had sex with a minor, at which point they leveraged that information for more sex, as well as drugs and other items from the teacher. The youths also began filming her and taking more photos, which the teachers say they used to build more blackmail material against her. Armed with it, she says they forced her to buy them drugs, food, and tobacco. A 15-year-old Iraqi is accused of putting an extreme amount of pressure on the victim, demanding her pay for a variety of items. The 15-year-old also obtained the ATM details of the woman and paid for 31 taxi rides with Uber and Bolt, which resulted in 545 euros worth of fees. However, the more serious charges relate to the sexual abuse allegations. The woman says she was continually forced to have sex with the teens, who the press have identified as having migrant background in most cases. The gang also showed her intimidating videos of the gang's actions, including a video where they beheaded a dead animal with a machete. In January, the youths are believed to have burned down the woman's apartment, according to prosecutors. The woman was away on vacation when the youths broke in through a back patio, hosted a party, and then burned her apartment down afterwards. 4 members of the youth gang were identified getting off near a tram right before the blaze began. The 15-year-old Iraqi was tracked down to being inside the woman's apartment the night it burned down. He was logged into the apartment's Wi-Fi right before the arson. One of the woman's watches was also recovered from the teen's sister after he gave it to her. Once the teacher returned to her apartment, she contacted the authorities. During the police investigation into the cause of the fire, she finally told officers about her months-long ordeal. Police found DNA evidence of the 2 youth gang members on cigarette butts at the crime scene. Teenagers deny all charges and refuse to testify in the case. One 15-year-old youth admitted to taking taxi rides, which the teacher paid for. They all say the woman consensually had sex with them. The list of charges include aggravated extortion, gang rape, sexual abuse, drug trafficking, and arson. The youths potentially face up to 7.5 years in prison if convicted, according to Kronen Zeitung. This just goes to show, this highlighted everything to do with everything wrong with the outlook that we talked about with those ladies that were so suicidally empathetic and wanted to destroy their country. But this speaks to another level, again, where a lot of us, we need to have a look in the mirror and look at our own degeneracy and really allow the sunlight to shine on it in some instances. Because she did do something very, very heinous. obviously, especially with the position that she's in. She's in a position where she's accused with child welfare, and whether the person, the 16-year-old, was a student at the school or whatever. Obviously, that's a massive abuse of power. Then it's hard, at least I think, to make the case that she deserved all of this extra stuff that happened to her. Obviously, she deserved to go to prison. She deserved to lose a job and all the rest of it, right? Obviously, for doing what she did. But the toll of this now is going to have so much, so much more of an impact that in some ways you kind of have to feel sorry for her to a certain extent. Not for what she did, but just for everything that happened afterwards that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. You know what I mean? It tells you a lot of the values a lot of these people are coming from that we've imported en masse, right? So we know that outside of certain circumstances, you do have bad people in this country, obviously. That a lot of the values that we are brought up with, right, in this country, you would never dream of doing anything like this when you were that age. You would never dream of doing anything like it. And if your parents, found out that you'd done anything close to this, Jesus Christ. And obviously that's something that with the nanny state restrictions that have been brought in, kids have now been, basically told, the parents have been told that if whatever your kids do, you can't really discipline them in any way, with, smacking ban and all the rest of it. That if you were going to do something really, really bad and you were going to go home and have to face your parents afterwards, and, obviously there's a fine line, obviously. But if you're potentially going to get an ass kicking afterwards, you'd be a hell of a lot more motivated not to do that evil thing in the first place, right? Now kids have been emboldened, but not only that, because of the ethnic reasons, because of the ethnic differences, because of likely the religious ideology differences as well, there's very unlikely that these kids, at least from what I understand about these cultures and stuff like that, and what we've seen with the rape gangs and stuff like that. Obviously, this isn't, a child victim in many instances. Obviously, in many instances, the first victim was a child, the 16-year-old. Obviously, then they gained that for everything that they could. So obviously, there's grave evil that they committed as well. But when they go back to the families, they would find out, would they have the same outlook? Would they have the same interpretive framework that we do and understand this is a grave evil that's taken place when you, understand how sectarian and tribal humans are by their nature. And then you have the religious reasons and stuff like that as well. That this lady, not a Muslim likely, if these people are Muslims, obviously they might not be. I might be getting this completely wrong. But if they see her as a kuffar, for example, they're not really going to be spending too much time worrying about her mental health and stuff like that, and how this has affected her and the evil that the kids had committed off the back of they saw an entry point to obviously get in and game this lady, obviously. The evil that she committed, the evil that she did doesn't justify necessarily the evil that the kid's done to her. And it's just a horrible, horrible situation. This is evil on both fronts. It's evil on the part of the teacher, who obviously did something very, very evil to start off with, but then a true disgusting evil that came later on, with how then she was, taken for this months-long ordeal. And it's a perfect example where we need to look at not only, this is a perfect case study of looking at the personal problems as well as looking at the imported problems. And we're seeing so many of that as we've dared to stray from God. The reason why I bring that up, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously these people, as we know, we've seen time and time again, and this brings up a massive contrast between our nations and a nation like Poland, for example. These people are very imperialistic, very colonial, for all the evils we're told about British colonialism and all the rest of it. These people that we're now told we have to import under the guise of diversity and tolerance and inclusion and all the rest of it, right, and empathy, they're very imperialistic and very colonizing in nature, right, especially with their religion. Especially with their religion that demands they turn the world into a one government caliphate, essentially, a one religious caliphate. They'll happily do this on our public areas, our footpaths, our roads, our beaches, despite the fact that they now have more places of worship than ever. That, in my opinion, it was the gravest mistake was when the first mosque was ever built in this land, right? The first mosque ever being built was one of the gravest mistakes we ever made. But here are, despite the fact that they now have more places to worship than ever, here are these people taking up their positions on a public place and taking up massive space that could otherwise be used for like family goers and all the rest of it, to sun their arseholes for their god, right? So here you go. So here, ladies and gentlemen, is Bournemouth Beach. So as you can see, they're doing their prayers. I believe they've got their mats and stuff like that, but they're doing all of this in flagrant view of everybody else. And a lot of people will be thinking, well, this isn't a problem. They're just praying. They're not doing any harm or anything like that. The problem is, and this is the disconnect between how I see, for the most part, particularly liberals think about this, right? Where they think everybody just lives in their own bubbles and that what one person does doesn't affect anybody else, right? When in reality it does, because it speaks to their worldview, which absolutely does affect you, right? Because their worldview includes stuff that they're meant to do to you. So this, right, because they don't do it in their place of worship in this instance, right? Deliberately not doing it in their place of worship. This is an act of dominance. This is an act of dominance. Because otherwise they just go and do it in their place of worship, right? No, they're showing in their own mind that they perceive themselves as dominant and they'll do it wherever the hell they want to. They don't care if you have any problems with it. They don't care if you have any problems with it, because sooner or later they're going to get to themselves where they're in such a number where you won't be able to voice your opinion anyway. You'll be subjugated, you'll be paying jizya, or you'll be dead. You'll be dead, right? That's the way that they see it. You might not think that. You might not care about that. You know, the liberals who think that everybody just lives in their own world and everybody just does whatever they want, right? And it doesn't affect anybody else, right? They might just see this and they just say, oh, they're just praying. It's no harm being done. What's going on in the mind is absolutely something you should be taking into account, and absolutely something you should be perturbed by, and understanding that it's something you need to do something about. Poland understand this. Which is why their beaches, when you have a look at their beaches, are relatively safe. In comparison. So this is a beach in Poland, for example, ladies and gentlemen, where Poland, not big on fake asylum seekers, not big on Islam, have a very strong, ethnically homogenous population for the most part. We're one of the very safest nations in Europe, right? Due to having very strict border controls and deploying the fucking military at the border to actually, enforce the border. All right. That when you go to their beaches, you don't see people sunning their arseholes for Allah or whatever. You actually see families having fun, children being safe. You can actually leave your child to go and do some things or whatever, as you'll see in this video. So you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that it's just a bunch of families, Polish families, having a good time at the beach, not having to worry about a bunch of foreign men shining their arseholes towards the sun. Right, not have to worry about any of the colonization stuff. You see, it's relatively safe. Nobody's worried. Don't have any, creepy, rapey migrants in the sea. I want a beach like that. If I want to go to the beach, I want to see beaches like that, not beaches where you have this dominance display. Is that really so much to ask for? Apparently in the UK it is. Because everything pretty much is rigged against you. And that's not just unique to the UK either. Because O'Keefe Media Group, led by James O'Keefe in America, recently highlighted with an undercover journalist somebody that was downplaying migrant crime to the DNC, but then the director of advocacy for a company, I believe it's called Vera, from this post, admitted that the non-profit secretly tips off illegals to ICE locations using hidden notification systems as a method to keep the desired voter base in the country. So this is an example of an American, quote-unquote, non-profit, right? And we have similar instances probably happening with charities in the UK, for example, government-backed charities, right? taxpayer-funded charities, we should say, that are deliberately going against the government and deliberately going against the will of the American people in these instances, because Trump won everything. He got a mandate to rule, for whether you like him or not. He got a mandate to rule, and campaigned again and got massive support on mass deportations of illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. And this is an example of a non-profit using whatever systems they have to try and hide those people. Okay, so this could be akin to treason. It's very akin to stuff that we see happening in the UK, where we see that every public institution, charities, non-profits, whatever it may be, is turned against the people and is doing everything they can for the benefit of foreigners. Right? That's what we're seeing. So here's that video coming on screen for you now, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you know when the ICE raids are going to happen?
Yeah, and so my organization runs a couple of databases where we can see like ICE trends, like where they're keeping people, where they like moving people around. We keep track of everything that's happening with ICE, as much as like information as they'll give us. Sometimes we have to like sue them to get information.
Who's your main donor?
It's usually the foundations, like the Gates Foundation or Jeff Bezos, or like some of these like huge philanthropists who like have $billions.
And Vera is proud of their work. Santiago Muque candidly shared how Vera created notification systems to alert illegals of ICE agents and impending raids.
These organizations, at worst, they could be setting up ICE officers to be put into dangerous situations where they are harmed.
10 people are facing charges for their roles in the shooting of an Alvarado police officer at an ICE detention center.
Weapons, tactical gear, and graffiti, they say were part of a violent planned ambush at the ICE detention facility in Alvarado.
Mass deportation of illegal immigrants has been one of President Trump's primary promises since his 2016 campaign.
We will begin.
So there you go. Highlighting just the lengths that these people will go to defend their interests in many instances now, because obviously they, the Bill Gates Foundation or whoever it is obviously wants to keep the politicians that they want in office, and in order to do that, they need the foreign people to be able to vote, because they'll overwhelmingly vote Democrat in America, for example, for the most part. Even though they're doing everything they can to destroy the country, right? So that the powerful people want these people that will do more of what they want to do in place. To do that, they need the votes in order to keep up the facade of democracy. In order to do that with how much they've alienated the American people, then they need to do that via mass importation of people. But this is the lengths that they'll go to. They'll happily get people, ICE agents or whoever it is. They'll happily get anybody who's an object, who's an obstacle. They'll happily do them out of the way via killing them or whatever, or putting them in situations where they can get killed. And these people are very, very deeply evil people. But this is the scale of things that this is in the US, for example. But we have scales of things in the UK that are against us in all the same ways as well. They'll do everything that they can. Make no mistake, the government and the people backing them will do everything they can to protect their interests, right? Which in many instances now runs direct counter to what our interests are, what our interests should be. Make no mistake, they'll use every tool that they can, right? They'll use mass demoralization by turning the UK into a giant rape cage. Masses of feminist propaganda, right? That's turned families against each other, turned, straight out of Satan's playbook, if you will. They'll go and whether you care about it or not, profess their love and worship Satan and all the rest of it, right? They'll flood your communities with disgusting gang rapists and all the rest of it, but also give them the right to vote, so they'll outvote you with your own democratic system. Everything they can to eliminate you from the gene pool. And this is the case now where you're seeing, where's the minority rights for white people, for example, when they are a global minority? When they're a global minority, they're the ones that are being forced to have this wave of diversity pushed on them when we are actually a global minority. Where's our rights? Where's our minority rights? And of course, we're evil oppressors. We can't have those. Of course not. But this just goes to show the depths of the institutions, the depths of the government institutions, charities, etc., that are against us. And in many instances, they just want to outright insult you as well, which is what the Senedd seems to absolutely specialize in. The Senedd seems to specialize in, as it gives free entry to historic monuments to asylum seekers, right? The NHS in Wales, one of the worst performing NHS in the country, but yet we can give free entry to historic buildings to quote-unquote asylum seekers to the tune of 3,500 of them, to the tune of however much taxpayer cash it was. There's no figure given on this post. But this is a priority for the short-haired, can I speak to the manager, purple-haired feminist that we have in this clip, namely Dawn Bowden, as we've spoken about before time and time again. And again, calls them refugees. They're many instances not refugees. They are political tools being used by the government, as we know. But here is that clip where they're given free entry to historic buildings. Presumably, these historic buildings that our taxes would go to maintain or whatever, presumably we have to pay to enter. Again, just shows the lengths that the government will go to not only be tyrannical, but also be, insulting as well.
Over 3,500 refugees and asylum seekers had rate-free admission to CADW sites last year. CADW has also worked to diversify its website, co-creating content with the Romani Cultural and Arts Company and commissioning creative celebrations of Black people in Welsh history.
Yeah, kind of quote-unquote Black people in Welsh history that the BBC want to convince you Black people in Anglo-Saxon history, with that image that's floating around X at the moment of a quote-unquote Anglo-Saxon of African descent in a BBC series, I believe it is. So again, complete distortion of history. But not only that, it's just a kick in the face. It's just a kick and a spit in the face of good, hardworking people and taxpayers of this country, whereby you are forced to pay your taxes. We're forced to pay taxes or we'll go to prison, right, in order for purple-haired feminist Dawn Bowden, right, to give it away to foreigners to go see these sites for free. Right. Meanwhile, your public health system is on its knees. Your roads are terrible. Potholes can't fill in. Maybe if we paint the Welsh flag on potholes, they'll actually get solved quicker. National pride or, national pride really is no other way to put it, really. I don't like the term pride, obviously. But national pride or positive national sentiment, if you will, seems to be at an all-time low. Very little things to celebrate, seemingly, as everything we're told is just going to get more and more expensive. Or we need to bend over backwards to accommodate people that, just have no right to be here. And as I said, your money, which you're forced and obligated to pay to the government, gets wasted, spaffed up the wall on giving quote-unquote refugees, these economic migrants again, free access to CADW sites. Again, it's just insulting. It's just insulting. But a more perfect encapsulation of government versus people could not be put any better than in this video. And I'm not even going to go into the, as many people will go into, if you look on X, for example, the racial element of this video. I'm not making that claim, but this is a perfect illustration of people versus government, in my opinion, as I'll bring it up on screen now. This is a video centered around a bin, centered around, or if you're an American, a garbage can or garbage disposal place, because it's made out of concrete by the look, so it's not really a can. This is a perfect encapsulation of so many things. There's so many themes that run through this short 30-second video that could be extrapolated to why our societies are in the state that they are in. I'm just going to bring it up on screen for you. I'm just going to play it and just let you guys make the determinations yourselves. Again, a lot of people take this just purely on the racial element. I'm not doing that. I think it would be quite unfair to do so. I see, when I look at this video, as I said, people versus government. So, in this video, you have the one kid that was quite clearly raised well, and sadly, he's befallen two ladies who would obviously be intersectional feminists. But what's happening in the video, ladies and gentlemen, if you were not watching but listening to the audio, there's a young white kid, probably, if I had to guess, probably not even in his teens, I would imagine. Maybe around, say, between 12 and 15, if I had to guess. Young white kid, young boy, picking up garbage or picking up rubbish off the floor, right, and putting it in the bin, right? And opposite him are two older ladies. One of them appears to be the mother and one of them appears to be the daughter, seemingly of African-American descent, seemingly. As he's putting the rubbish in the bin, they're taking the rubbish back out of the bin and putting it back on the floor. Just being stupidly petty and vindictive and frankly evil, right? You have a person here that's trying to do a good, namely clean up the community, clean up the area where this is, which appears to be, you know, some kind of residential center or whatever. You have a bunch of seals cheering and clapping around it then and recording it and laughing, obviously. Many people will obviously take this to be the manifestation of the anti-racist ideology. But this, in my opinion, is just a perfect encapsulation of government versus people, because you have people having to clean up the mess, right, in their communities that have been caused, in many instances, by the government, and the government just doing every single thing it can to take the rubbish back out and put it back onto the streets. Right, they're doing that with the woke judiciary, locking up people for Facebook posts, but letting child rapists go free. You're seeing that with the police, who will arrest fathers, right? Will arrest fathers for trying to rescue their daughters from rape dens, but allow said rapists to go free and do nothing. In many instances, outright take part in the abuse themselves, seemingly. The councils that will spend the money, as I just mentioned before, or politicians that will spend money giving quote-unquote refugees access to Wales's historic buildings or whatever, but let public services and everything go by the wayside just so they can bend over backwards for these people because they're hoping that them and their families will vote for them. So many different themes are present in such a short video. And obviously the racial themes do have to be talked about as well with regards to the anti-racist indoctrination that exists, especially within schools nowadays, where everything is all the rage as part of the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff. Anti-racism and all of this stuff is a big part of it as well, where you have, no matter what this kid does, he's seemingly always some kind of oppressor and should always be treated with disdain, and everything that he does, no matter how good it is, should be reversed in the name of anti-racism or in the name of culture or whatever it is, even if it means that you're making your society and making your community a trash heap as a result, you know, a rubbish heap as a result. And you wonder why race relations are so bad right now. You wonder why people, the government has to do so much with community tensions, not inflaming community tensions, when in large part, you know, this is exactly what's going on. The people are trying to pick up the pieces of the broken lives and families, you know, from the rape gangs and stuff like that. And the government is doing everything they can to flood our streets with more of them and not prosecute them. And then obviously the people in question as well are emboldened more and more and more by our weak government with no spine whatsoever, but not only weak but evil as well. Not only weak but evil, you know, to force this quote-unquote diversity on our communities. And then you wonder why people that are no longer scared of being called racist or homophobic or whatever it is, right? You know, wonder why people are no longer scared anymore, It's because they know no matter what they do, they're not only not going to get thanked for it, but there's certain people who've been deemed to be privileged or, well, have been put into de facto positions of privilege by their victimhood or perceived victimhood, right? That will just come along and do it all. And not only that, lecture them on how evil they are as well. So at that point, you basically just say, well, if you're going to call me that no matter what, I'm not going to be scared of being called it anymore. I'm still going to do the right thing regardless. But there's so many themes that run through this one video. But me, when I see this, I see people versus government encapsulated. People in government, people versus government personified. Government is doing everything possible to outdo, or rather to undo the work, the good work of the flood their communities with trash. Flood their communities with trash despite the efforts of the community themselves to keep the communities safe, sanitary, and safe, right? I know I said safe twice there. I'm losing my train of thought a little bit now because this record is going on a little bit long. But we're nearly at the end. We are nearly at the end. Remember when Andrew Wilson talked about, you know, women being one of the main drivers, big main drivers of the problems that we see nowadays? When you see people like Leanne Wood, it's hard to deny. So Leanne Wood, who by her own admission is an internationalist, a socialist, an anti-fascist, a she-her community builder, dedicated to exposing far-right and neo-fascists, right? When she puts up the symbol of Wales, flag of Wales, love heart, says, this flag is a symbol of love, of welcome, of togetherness, of inclusion, that all of us who live in Wales are equal. If you show this flag, you are displaying these values. I'm grateful to you. Diolch. It's really hard, again, to make the case of when this person, when this Leanne, has to reap the poison fruit of her harvest, that then those men who she'll spend time disparaging for having any kind of nationalist sentiment or any kind of, you know, protective instinct or anything like that, or any kind of notion that men and women have duties, responsibilities, roles, etc., and insinuating that maybe those duties, roles, responsibilities should be adhered to. I'll have a hissy fit, right? Important to note, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, and I actually commented on this on X, you can find my post as well on my page, is that this flag, the flag that is the Welsh flag with the red dragon on it, the funniest thing is that it literally means the exact opposite of what Leanne wants it to mean in her pursuit of her internationalist socialist government, right? Because she's all for the one world government, kumbaya, and system of utopia, right? Which will never manifest, right? The exact ideology that's put on the rape cage that the UK has become. A little bit of history for you, ladies and gentlemen, Jeevan Grok will tell you, is that the history of the Red Dragon was used as a symbol against invasion, was used as a symbol of native Britain's resilience against invasion. In historical context, when you look at Idraig Goch, he's known as, right? Red Dragon. It was known in history, or was referenced in history and folk ballads, etc., for being the red dragon versus the white dragon. The white dragon symbolizing the invading Saxons, right? The English, right? So the red dragon itself is a symbol of resilience against invasion. It is the exact opposite of welcoming, togetherness, and inclusion and love, right? It's a love for one's people and one's nation, and resilience to protect them. Right, which distinctly means not togetherness, right? Not inclusion of this invading force, but obviously Leanne wants to use it to mean this invading force, right? Which is exactly what the migrant wave has become, which is exactly what I said. The people are anti-Wales, like Leanne, they're anti-Wales because they pursue this kumbaya and utopian vision of one world government, and they'll not hesitate to destroy Wales as a nation and people in pursuit of it. In this instance, she's just like the Nazis and fascists that she claims to be against. because, as I said, resilience to invasion could now apply and should be applied to the imported vote bloc, which is being brought in en masse, which is basically a de facto invasion force, with how much it erodes democratic privileges and how much it's going to change the demography and culture of this country, right? Is facilitated by treasonous politicians, enabled by people like Leanne. So outright distortion of the flag of Wales, which is, I don't think there's any cooler flags on it because, you know, dragon, big red dragon, right? Big cool red dragon. But not to mention, ladies and gentlemen, another thing which she's going to get pilloried for as well is by saying that all of us who live in Wales are equal. And this is also demonstrably untrue by two things, at least in my opinion. You have the downward equalization, so known as equity, resulting from socialism, right? Resulting from us becoming the People's Republic of Wales, right? Everyone below the political class is substantially less equal than those above them, right? Think of the quote from Animal Farm, ladies and gentlemen. All animals all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, right? That's the thing that was painted on the side of the barn by the pigs, right? Of being gaslighting the rest of the farm into this revolution, whereby after they had basically enslaved the rest of the farm and were getting fat off the back of the labor of the slave labor of the rest of the farm animals, right? They were then right and royally in bed with the humans that came before them, that they whipped up the revolution against the humans, right? The classic example of what happens after a socialist revolution, if you will, where the leaders of that revolution will leave their own people in the dust as they ally with the powerful people that came before them. It's a classic thing with a coup, right? With a coup, you'll have power players in the one government that's coming in allying with certain power players in the government that came before and doing away with some of their revolutionary counterparts that helped them take power. It's exactly what happens, and that's why all animals are equal. Some animals are more equal than others. You know, the pigs are getting fat with the humans in the accommodation of the farmhouse, right? And the animals being left to basically starve. And Animal Farm's quite it's a lot of really sad themes in there as well. With one of the horses. One of the elderly horses, the pigs lie to the rest of the farm animals, saying that they're going to go take him to get some veterinary care. And it's a, animal euthanasia van that comes and they try to chase it down. But the elderly animal ends up being taken away. And obviously then, I think it was a slaughterhouse van actually killed and slaughtered. You don't obviously necessarily learn that. It's, left for you to piece together the rest of it in your own mind based upon the clues that you've been left. George Orwell was a really good writer in that instance. It's such a short story. Animal Farm, only about 100 pages or so. Such a short story communicates so much. So much. It's a book you really need to read if you haven't read it. And also, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, with something like the Equality Act that we have in the UK, you've created de facto privileged classes based on perceived victimhood status along these arbitrary lines that we've created, even along lines that are completely mythical and exist only within the heads of certain people, namely gender identity, which obviously is a condition, previously known as gender dysphoria, where your perceived, gender didn't match up with your sex or whatever, and you would be confused and you'd have mental health problems as a result. Now we've turned that into a de facto privileged class. Right? We've turned that into a de facto privileged class when you can't say anything bad about it. You can't question this person's perceived gender identity. You can't actually help them deal with the problem because you can't tell the truth to them. That is only happening because they are a privileged class. It is, they have a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. Right? And now you have the case of where under the Equality Act, again, all people are equal, but some are more equal than others. Right, because certain religions get elevated to a greater extent more than others. Certain things that are deemed as oppressive, they get sent to the bottom. So if you are a straight white Christian male, you're at the bottom no matter fucking what. You're at the bottom no matter fucking what. Now you can only gain victimhood points to increase your social standing, to increase your privilege if you adopt, say, a trans identity, if you adopt some kind of sexual identity, like you're gay or whatever, right? All of these different things. If you're a woman, you get elevated above it because obviously you're being oppressed by the man, right? And it's completely turned everything on its head to whereby just the average man can't do any right. He can't do right for doing wrong in many instances. What's happening? This should give you some, reason to hope, ladies and gentlemen, is that once upon a time, these two dragons, right, may have been in conflict, right? The red dragon, the white dragon, they may have been in conflict at one point. However, much to Leanne's dismay, I would imagine, is that the dragons are realizing that now they actually have a common enemy. The dragons of this nation are realizing that they have a common enemy and are now uniting the face of that common enemy. So whereas the dragons may have been fighting before, they're now realizing it's better to be on the same side. Because we can go back to having our little tribal disputes afterwards, provided we survive the onslaught that is to come, or provided the onslaught that outsiders and globalist organizations want to inflict on our lands, right? They want to do that. And that's the game that they've been playing for so long. So they've been succeeding for a fair while by preying on our empathy, by preying on our ignorance and all of these things, by distorting history and all the rest of it through the public school system. A deliberate psyop and propaganda campaign. However, the dragons are waking up and they're realizing they're better as friends than as enemies, right? And so here we are, in spite of everyone and everything, we are still here, and here we will remain. It's as simple as that. So don't let Leanne and people like Leanne dupe you into thinking that the Welsh flag means anything that they think it means. It doesn't mean anything that they think it means. They just want to use that beloved symbol of this nation and of its people to suit their globalist agendas. But it's not true, and they should be rightfully mocked and scorned as a result of that. And that'll do it for today. Thank you very much for watching, listening, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a very long episode today, a bit winding, but there was a lot of things I wanted to catch up on. Obviously, this is the first episode that I've done since coming back from my trip away. So thank you very much. As always, I'm hoping to have this out later on today. If not, it'll be out on Thursday the 28th. Thank you all so much for watching, listening, as always. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, good night, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Hwyl fawr. We will see you next time. And you take care now. Godspeed.